we'll get started here today. So I'm going to introduce myself and then I'll let our two panelists introduce themselves afterwards. But I just want to thank everyone for attending and welcome to our first of this academic year Tips for Alumni panel. This one is particularly about the PhD and the journey to and through that. So just to introduce myself a little bit specifically, my name is Jorden King. I'm the Assistant Director of Student and Career Services here in the School of Education. So myself, along with our Alumni and Development Department, Office of Admissions, Marketing, and Technology Department, we are happy to host this webinar for you to get familiar with two of our alumni in our school. So I will now let Jasmine introduce herself, and then we'll have Chantee introduce herself next.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, well, afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jasmine, alumni from the School of Education. I graduated with my master's and my doctorate in applied developmental psychology. That was in 2018. Now I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I am a senior user experience researcher at Meta. I focus specifically on youth safety and well-being on our platforms, particularly Instagram. Yeah, is there anything else you wanted for the intro?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chantee Earl, and I am a three-time Pitt alum. I got my bachelor's, master's, and PhD at the University of Pittsburgh. I currently serve as a clinical associate professor at Georgia State University in the department in middle and secondary education, where I prepare teachers. Happy to be here today.
Thank you both for sharing a little bit about yourselves, and happy to hear that you're both more than just one-time Pitt alums. I'm also following suit, so two-time right now. Hopefully, we'll make that way to the third as well. So happy to see where you've come and where you're at right now. So the first question that I'm just kind of open it up with is it's going to kind of sound like a funny question, but is there something you wish you knew before entering your PhD program? And if so, what was it?
I'm happy to start. I think there's two things that come to mind for me when I think about what I wish I knew. I think one of them is to really take advantage of the time you have to be like fully immersed in being a student if you are, a full-time student, because you really don't ever get that time back. And like once you're out in the working world, it's a unique opportunity you have as a PhD student to learn and to grow. And I think the other thing that I wish I knew was that once you have a PhD, the world is kind of your oyster. There are tons of job options for PhDs within academia, outside of academia. You become a subject matter and a methodological expert. When you're running research studies and running labs, managing undergrads, like all of those skills can be translated into a multitude of job opportunities. And so I think thinking about the ways, like what you enjoy about your time as a PhD student, and what's going to help you like fulfill you in a career later on.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to kind of add to what Jasmine is saying, this idea that the PhD opens you to so many varied opportunities for employment and just research and teaching. I think when I was getting my PhD, I was thinking about, oh, I'm going to be a college professor. And that's just what I'm going to do, right? But now I see that there are so many, after I finished my work, other people that came behind me just showed me how many other various opportunities there were with the PhD. You can go into private industry, right? Because like Jasmine said, you have these expert skills and knowledge, right? You have research. You understand research. You know how to take data and use it, right, to make informed decisions. You have this level of teaching experience that most people do not have. And so thinking about how you can leverage all of that, if I had known that I think I just want to automatically say, okay, the only option for me with this PhD is to become a college professor, right? Not to say that I don't enjoy what I do. I love it every day. I wake up and I get to work with teachers and people that want to be teachers. But there are so many other opportunities that I have now been exposed to just because I have this advanced degree. So that's something I think I would have thought about more when I what I wish I had known when I was beginning my work towards my PhD. So
Yeah, and I think that what I've heard both of you saying is that like you might have not known exactly what opportunities and were offered and what this was going to open up for you while you were doing it, but then saw the magnitude of kind of how your trajectory changed, and the options at least that were open for you. So, kind of building off of that question, I just want to ask a little bit about what your experience was like during your time here at Pitt and as a PhD student. And this can kind of shape in whichever direction you kind of feel the question will take you.
I guess I can go first. I will say that my time as a PhD student at Pitt was amazing. It was the first time that I really got to delve deep into my practice and what it means to be a teacher and all the, because in your master's program, you're really learning more about instruction, right? How to teach, how to prepare and train to be an effective teacher. But then in the PhD program, I got to really understand why I was using the methods I was using. Why was race and social economic and culture all so very important into the work that I was doing teaching kids? And so the PhD gave me that opportunity to really learn and find out what was passionate to me about teaching and learning for K through 12 and adult students. So that was one thing I would say that really captivated my work as a student in the PhD program. Just being able to learn so much, being able to hear from so many different people, so many different perspectives and understanding about what it means to be an educator, right? I didn't, in your master's program, you get some of those, but you don't really get to really explore the field, explore all these different ways of thinking and knowing and how that affects you as an individual in the world, right? And so that for me was so amazing, having that opportunity to engage with so many different people. And then not only just taking those theories, but then putting them in practice. Because when I was a student there, they were beginning, we had a partnership with, I think it was, I can't remember the school now, up on the hill. It was called Shenley High School at the time. It's no longer. I don't know if Shenley High School is still there, but we were beginning this urban ed partnership, and Dr. Luis Gomez him and his wife were here, and they were doing amazing work and starting this program. And so I got to really get my feet wet, right? And so some of the stuff I was learning, I got to really try it out. And so for me, that was exciting, right? That my ideas and my thoughts mattered to the point where I was able to engage young people in these notions of teaching and learning. And so that was something that I would say was memorable, that highlighted my time here at Pitt.
Yeah, just to build off of that, I also feel very grateful that I feel like I had a similarly amazing experience at Pitt. I felt very supported by my advisor and all of the faculty within the school. It was during the time that the Center for Urban Education was really, really growing. And so the opportunities to learn from all of the scholars that came to the center to visit, there were always like really inspiring talks. And I just felt like my time as a PhD student, I really just got to soak everything in and explore and ask questions. And so I feel grateful for my time at Pitt. And I feel like all of the skills that I learned in terms of research and subject matter expertise, like directly led me to my career. And I feel like I don't feel like any of my time was like wasted, or if there was things that was missing, I feel like it really like helped shape me to be able to be the professional that I am.
Thank you both for that. And I think one of the things that kind of came up to me as I was thinking about that is, we are students in the program, but there's also so much else that's going on. And I think that one of the things that I myself, and I'm sure some other students that are watching right now, always wonder of like, what does work-life balance look like? So I'm wondering if you could share something, what work-life balance looked like for you, and then maybe if you did struggle with a little bit, some tips and tools that you can kind of give to the students as well.
I mean, I personally was always very intentional about taking advantage of all of the opportunities that were available at the school. Like I mentioned earlier, like making sure that I'm going to the talks, going to the book clubs, going to all of the events to network with people and to learn from them. And so I feel like figuring out that balance between like your coursework, your research, and being a part of the community. I think sometimes people can get so bogged down in like their coursework and the research and hitting their milestones that they don't get involved in the community. I think one of the biggest resources you have as a graduate student is the community of faculty, of students, of people that are in and around the School of Education. So I would just stress that finding whatever that looks like for you, finding that balance.
Yes, I would ditto what Jasmine said, because when you asked that question, that was the one thing that I can remember that helped me through my whole process. I'll tell you quickly, when I moved to Pittsburgh in 2005 to pursue my doctorate, I found out, my husband and I found out that we were going to have a little one. Well, the little one was supposed to come in December at the end of the first semester. The little one came in October, in the middle of my first semester. And so it was like, oh my gosh, I'm a new mom. I'm taking these courses. I got all of this going on. I want to be involved in everything that's happening. But I realized that I couldn't do it all without the support of community, not just my immediate family, right? And the people that I lived around, but also my community of my classmates, my professors, my University of Pittsburgh community. And so I think it is very important to help with that work-life balance when you have community, right? Because community oftentimes is there to support you, right? And uplift you in those times where it's difficult, where it's hard. So as students, I remember Jessica and Michelle, Renee, and all of us, Nasakar, we would all get together, and on the weekends, even if it was just to have a meal, right? And not to even talk about our classes, but just to talk about life, right? And that served as a space for us to build community and to support and uplift each other. Also, I'm a person of faith, so I had my religious community. So outlet for me was to go to church on Sunday, right? I ran track. So another outlet was for me to run in Shinley Park, right? So finding those other things, right, that were necessary to help me through this process was very important. And I believe if I didn't have that community, right, if my professors weren't okay with me bringing my son to class, right, then it would have been a real struggle for me to obtain my PhD. And so I am so grateful to that community, and some of the same ways in which that community was established for me. I feel like that's what I have to do for my students now, right? I have to be the one to provide community, because it is challenging. It's difficult. You're learning all this stuff. You're reading all the time. It feels like you're writing all the time. So where is that space to just breathe and have that moment? And so I feel like community is what helped me have that work-life balance. And it's so important.
Yeah, I definitely think that you all sharing that is going to be helpful. I know that we have a number of different students that come from out of state, across the world, to come to Pittsburgh, and it might be a little bit difficult. So hopefully this incentivizes them to think about ways in which they can create their own communities or go out and find communities that already exist in Pittsburgh. So thank you for that. I want to shift a little bit, and it's kind of adjacent to what we've already been talking about, but I heard a little bit about, you've all learned so much in your respective programs, but I want to know a little bit about kind of the things that you might have not thought you would learn that are applicable to things that you do now during your time there. So were there any kind of hard or soft skills that you learned during your time in your PhD program that you've taken with you? And it could be in your current roles or prior roles that have really helped you kind of be prepared for the next step.
I can take this one. So in terms of hard skills, um, when I was in the ADP program, there was a really strong emphasis on the applied part of the research. And so how do you talk to policy audiences? How do you talk to teachers and administrators? Like, how do you translate your research findings for real world application? And I feel like that training is kind of what led me down the path that I'm on now. So when I first graduated from Pitt, I was working in the nonprofit space and developing social emotional learning curriculum. And then now I work in big tech around youth safety and well-being. And I feel like all of the skills that I learned, again, around like translating research findings and how do you speak to different audiences. In terms of soft skills, I feel like managing personalities is something that you learn from running research studies and being in different professors' classes and working with different participants. And I think that has served me well in my professional role as well, in terms of being able to work with different cross-functional partners and people with different trainings and backgrounds. And so I think that doing interdisciplinary research as well is helpful for that. It helps you build on that muscle of being able to kind of live in another expert space and to be able to learn from them. Yeah, so those are two that come to mind immediately.
Yeah, and I think kind of understanding how to talk about the why you're doing the work that you're doing. I feel like when I was studying, right, and pursuing my doctorate, and doing all this research, right, the way that it was talked about in the academy was very different than the way I would talk about it in community with the people I was in relationship with. So understanding how to translate my why into a way to engage other people who were necessarily academics in the conversation. Why is it important that we incorporate culturally responsive pedagogy, right? Me talking to someone else in the academy, we have all this stuff, but me talking to a parent in a school setting or an administrator or even a family member about that, right? Having that understanding of how to speak about the work that I was doing to different spaces and different audiences was very important. And that was a skill I didn't really have prior to coming to Pitt. Right. I knew in studying my doctorate, I knew about the why in teacher term. Yeah, this is good for the kids. They need to know this. But I didn't know about it in the academic sense, right? And then I didn't know how to really translate it to the community sense, to the everyday, right, people. So I think that was a skill that I really was able to develop. And so now I can talk about the academic. I could talk about it in the community setting. I can go to a policymaker, say, well, House Bill 1084, talking about divisive concepts. This is why this bill is wrong and we need to have these conversations, right? And I can inform community. So I think for me, that one skill that I was able to take away from my study and my time at Pitt, and I would have to say, Dr. Rick Donato and Dr. John Myers, they were my two main advisors who was always like, so what, Chantee? So what, Chantee? So what? Who is this good for? Why is this good for them? What are you trying to tell them? They always question me, right? And always help me rethink my thoughts, right? And develop them fully. And so that was really important because I was so used to, okay, this is what it is and that's good enough. So that was, I think, helping me really develop the why and speak about the why to every group of people was important in my study.
Thank you for that. And as I know, a lot of us are, you all both mentioned the milestones and things like that. Like we're all focusing on being able to articulate some of those things. So that's been helpful. And also definitely managing personalities is something that we all need as well. One thing I will want to mention is that if you have questions, continue to put them in the chat. I see that we did have a question here. So this question is for you, Dr. Williams. So It says, I see Dr. Earl knew she wanted to be a college professor, but Dr. Williams, did you know you wanted to go into your current field?
No, I did not. I like many PhD students went in fully on track to like I wanted to be a tenure track professor. And I did pursue that and I did have that opportunity. But I chose to go into industry for personal and professional reasons. I liked the applied nature of the work. I liked the pace of the work. It's a little more fast paced, which I enjoy. It's extremely collaborative, and I enjoy that aspect as well. And again, like working with, like my team is not just researchers. My team is product designers, engineers, content designers, and people from like many different backgrounds. And I really enjoy that about my work. Um, my first role, I was mentioning, was at an education nonprofit. And so I feel like that was like um, an easier transition out of academia because like I still did like academic research, but I also did product research. And so I was able to really develop my like business sense when I was working at Committee for Children in Seattle. But yeah, I did not know that I would be here. But yeah, you just have to trust yourself and trust the process, trust your gut, and just really think deeply about like kind of what life you want to live.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse. Thank you for that. One question that I have, and this doesn't have to be like long, and you can share whatever you would like. And I know I kind of heard a little bit about it. Is what challenges, if any, did you face during your PhD program? And if you did face any challenges, how did you overcome those?
I can take this one. I think the biggest challenge for me was always feeling like there was something else I got to read. There's something else. I mean, it's like you never feel like you know enough of the information necessary on the topic that you're researching, that you're studying, right? So it was always like, oh, did you read this? Oh, no, I didn't read this. I got to go read this. And so sometimes it was difficult for me to kind of hone in on one idea. I was all over the place all the time, right? And so being able to really find a way to craft my information, my knowledge into a refined idea of thought. And so it seemed like I always was trying to read some more and do some more. And sometimes it became frustrating. I would say, and sometimes even like you felt this imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I don't know enough, right? I'm not ready. I I I don't know what I'm talking about. And so the way I began to overcome that is I really sat down and thought about, what do I really want to do, right? Why am I studying and doing this work? What is the goal of me attaining this degree? Is it just so I can say I'm Dr. Earl, right? What is the difference or the reason behind this work? And then I began to be able to focus, right? And come to, this is what I want to do with this work. This is where I see my trajectory moving after I leave this space. And so that it began to kind of make it a little bit easier for me to think about what I was reading and what else putting future time into. And so I would say for me, yeah, that being able to kind of bring all those ideas to like one centralized theme was difficult at times, and reading and reading and reading and then trying to connect. And when I was able to figure out that connection through conversations with friends, conversation with my classmates, conversations with my advisors, it clicked for me. And then I was like, oh, this is where it is. This is what I should focus on. But I would say that's the challenge a lot of times when you become a doc student. Yeah.
Plus one 1,000 times to that. That feeling of like, I don't know enough. I have to always keep reading. And I think for me, in addition to those feelings of imposter syndrome, it also just led to like the tasks would pile up. And it felt like you're not like making progress in the way that you should because you don't feel like you know enough. And you really just have to know enough to be dangerous and have like a clear idea. And I think that also led to burnout and figuring out how to not just push through burnout, because I think that I just pushed through burnout for a lot of my doctorate and a lot of my early career, but how to like actually not burn out and to actually be able to like notice when it's coming so that you can adjust your schedule, your life, your priorities to avoid that and to be able to maintain your mental health and well-being, which I honestly feel like I didn't get good at until like last year. But I think those were the things for me that were the challenges, that those feelings of like, I don't know enough, imposter syndrome, dealing with burnout.
Yeah, I think that we can all relate, and I'm sure people are probably shaking their heads as they're watching this because um, we all probably feel that experience of burnout, but most of us try to push through it, or we feel like we don't know enough and we keep doing the readings and trying to put in a cohesive thought. So thank you for that. I know that Dr. Williams, you have to drop off here, so I just wanted to allow you the space to give any piece of advice that you might have for the students, or if there's any faculty members on this call that you wanted to share before you have to part with us here today.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. I wish I could stay longer. I definitely got my times mixed up in the time zone. Um, Advice. I think the biggest one that I just want to reiterate is that obtaining a doctorate means that you can do many, many, many things. You are qualified to do many things. Again, like you're a subject matter expert, a methodological expert, people, project management skills, communication skills. Like there's so many things that you can do. And so I just want to say don't shy away from opportunities if you don't feel like you're a perfect fit or you meet every skill in the job listing. I think I see that a lot with early career people, especially women and people of color. It's like if you don't hit everything on the job list, you don't apply. And I feel like if something is interesting to you and you feel like it's a great opportunity for you, apply for it. I skipped over my first role. Like I saw that job posting several times. And I felt like, oh, I don't have any like non-academic research experience. They're never gonna hire me. And I just ignored it for like over a month. And then finally one day I was like, you know what, I'm gonna apply anyway. Like I'll see what they say. And I ended up with the job. So I just feel like, if something interests you, you want to do it, go after it.
Thank you for that advice, and I think that that's very important for people to know. And we really want to thank you for your time today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day as
Thank you
well.
so much. It was good to see you all.
It was nice seeing you as well.
Take care.
Chantee, so I just want to turn it back over to you and just ask a little bit about. I know that we have several students that might be attending that are interested in that kind of tenure track or just a professor role, just talking a little bit about the job experiences that you've had and what you learned from those experiences might be helpful.
Yeah, so I will say after I was finishing up, when I was finishing up my PhD, I was applying to all different types of positions. Some were clinical positions, some were tenure track positions, some was working in like research settings. So I landed on the position at Georgia State University. I am a clinical because I'm in a clinical line. And what a clinical line is different from a research line is the focus is more on teaching and service, whereas a tenure track is more of a research and service focus. Okay. And so as clinical faculty, I teach a set of courses, and I also I'm required to do so much service to the university and also to the community at large. I know I love teaching. Teaching is when I was talking about that why, I knew the reason why I came into the doctorate program because I wanted to help teachers in some way. I had some teachers in the school that I taught in the Bay Area who I felt like, oh man, if they had learned the things I learned at Pitt, maybe their teaching, their instruction would have been more relevant for the students that we were engaged in teaching. And so I knew kind of that was my focus. I enjoyed research. Research, as you know, is one of the biggest part of the PhD program. You got to do a dissertation. You have a research. So I wanted to be in a place where I could do both, right? I could continue to do my teaching and also doing my research. And so in my experience at Georgia State, because this has been the only position that I have held in my 15 years since I've completed my doctorate. I've been a teacher, so I teach, depending on the semester, maybe 2 to 3 courses, and then I do a level of service work in the university. I'm a part of different committees, right? And I also participate in activities within my local community. From my experiences, I have been able to really expand my teaching, right? So I'm not only just teaching students at the university, but I engage in a lot of work within the school districts, after school programming, you name it. I am able to expand my teaching in ways that reaches a broader audience. And part of that is due to my position in the university as a associate professor in teaching, right? Another thing I would say, I have been able to create all these great partnerships. That's the one thing I learned coming to Georgia State, is that when you become, just like you create a community, like I was talking about community in your doctorate program, when you get to a university and you're in a department, you are not bound to that department. Meaning that don't focus on only just, okay, I'm in the Department of Middle and Secondary Education. No, yeah, that's where you station, but you can collaborate with people all across the university. I've worked with professors in public health. My first study abroad I created in the Dominican Republic with a professor in the Department of Public Health. They were working on health initiatives. I was interested in educating families and communities. And so we partnered together and created a study abroad. I work with the Department of Africana Studies all the time. I work with English. So what happens is I began to create a larger community, and that's important. And it has allowed me to develop my teaching in so many different ways. And so that's another thing that I've learned from my time at Georgia State in my experiences. There are always opportunities to collaborate, and don't shy away from those opportunities. There's always opportunities to work on grants and projects. Don't shy away, because what I found is that it enhanced my teaching ability. It also gave me some opportunity to earn a little extra money and also to cut down. So oftentimes in the university setting, you'll get course releases, or you teach less courses when you're doing other types of work. So sometimes my work abroad, my international work, and my grant work has allowed me not to teach as many courses. So like I said, this collaboration, creation of community is so important. And in my experiences at Georgia State, I've been able to learn that. And then I just understand now more about systems and how systems work. And I think sometimes we don't think that the university is a large system, right? But being able to understand how different laws are passed, how different programs are set up for students, being a part of the university senate, understanding about faculty affairs and student affairs and how to make substance change around these issues are very important. So my time at Georgia State has allowed me to understand that process. So if I were to leave state tomorrow, I have all these amazing skills that I can take with me, like Jasmine said, into another career opportunity. So I think that's what my time at state has taught me. Yeah.
Thank you for that. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because I keep really hearing community is important, is advising in your advisor and your chair during your time in your program. I know that as a PhD student, I kind of came in and was under the impression that like my advisor was that person, and I have had to kind of switch advisors due to my advisor transferring to a different institution. So I was like kind of distraught. I was like, what am I going to do? But then I looked to my community for some of those answers. So I'm wondering, what your experience with your advisor was like, and how you kind of created the community of other faculty members to support your work during your time at Pitt.
Yeah, I think that's such a fine line, right? Because as a doc student, we feel like this is the person that's slated as our advisor, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes, and I don't want to go talk to so and so because maybe they may get upset, right? But I was so grateful. First of all, I have to say, Dr. John Myers, who was my main advisor, he was so open and understanding. I wanted to do my work around culturally responsive pedagogy, critical race theories, Africana studies. This was all the stuff that I incorporated in my research. John had no idea about that stuff, to be honest. And he was like, Chantee, I really don't, I'm not an expert. That's not my area. And so if you need to seek out other support and help, do that. And so that's what I would say is important in an advisor. If you don't have an advisor that is willing to support your learning, right, that is open to you seeking out support from other sources, that might not be the best person for you. Because learning is, I would say, a social process, right? So you learn it from different spaces and you bring that knowledge back. So I am grateful that I had John. I also had Dr. Rick Donato, who was always pushing me, write more, do more. And so he was also encouraging me to do other things. And then there was Dr. Amanda Godley. She was also there assisting, right? So I had all these different people working together to help me. And I think that is very important. And as a doc student, if you know what's best for you, it's okay to speak up and say, I need some other supports. And I know this is best for me, right? It's okay. Because as academics, as professors, we've been in your shoes. Sometimes we don't want to admit it, but we have. And so we knew the times that we needed additional supports, and maybe it might have been just a conversation with someone else that allowed us to regroup and rethink about things, right? But you have to have that open communication with your advisor as well. Don't be afraid to have those conversations. I call them the hard conversations. And don't be afraid to say, hey, I think I need to ask so-and-so about this. What do you think? Can we all facilitate a conversation around that? I think that becomes very important, because what you don't want to have happen is that your 5 years turn into your 7 years because you decided not to address something that was clearly needed to be addressed and bothering you, right? It's important that you connect with others. When you take classes with other professors, right? It's important to remember those professors and connect and have conversations, particularly if you're learning about various research methods, right? And you're taking a Qual 1 class or something like that, right? It's important to talk through those issues around methodology, because maybe that may not be your advisor's strong suit. And that's okay. Like when my students come to me, I say, okay, yeah, I can tell you all about this, this, and this. But if you're trying to do a quantitative or mixed methods, you might need to go talk to Dr. Fanillier, because that quant part, that's not my strong suit, right? And so being able to have that exchange, right, that keeping that communication is open, and it will help you as a doc student. And don't be afraid to have that conversation. It's at the end of the day, it's your degree. Don't be afraid to have that conversation.
Thank you for that. All of that was really insightful, and think when we think about advisors, and I think a lot of people can take a lot from that. I have one more question for you, and then I'm going to open the floor for you to give us a piece of your advice that we can take with us. So my question for you is about, and I kind of heard a little bit that you kind of came in interested in knowing what you wanted to talk about in research. And I feel like as like first, second, third year graduate students, we're like, we have so many ideas. But how did you get to a point where you kind of narrowed down some of your research questions to kind of get to that point for your milestone papers and then your dissertation? Or maybe you didn't get there until it was time to actually get there. How did you kind of get through that process?
Thank you for asking that question, because I tell my doc students now, if you have an idea and you start taking classes and you have to write something, write about that idea, right? Start researching about that idea, because then when you're able to hone that idea down, you have done some of that preliminary research. You have some of that knowledge that then you're not starting from scratch or from zero. When I came into my doc program, I had an idea. I was working in the Bay Area in an alternative school. I was a teacher there, and I was teaching mostly Black, Latino, and Asian students. And so I knew that how I was teaching them was but a little different than some of the strategies that I learned in my master's program. And they were doing well, they were excelling, my instruction was effective. That's all I knew. And I was like, man, whatever I'm doing, I wonder why I do it. I just decided to do it, but I know there's some reason why, and there may be some people doing this type of work. But when I came to Pitt, that wasn't what I was writing papers about. I was writing about citizenship education. that kind of connects to what I was interested in, but not really, right? And so it wasn't until I began to, when Dr. Gomez came and the Center for Urban Ed was developing, and we were doing that work at Shinley High School, and he was talking about different theories and practices and the work that I was doing, how it was connected to certain things. It helped me hone in and really gather the ideas that I wanted to study and focus. And then I thought about my own experiences, my own education. And I was like, man, what is happening here? All these are coming together real nicely. And look, I landed on critical race theory, CRP, and Africana studies, Africana education, all African-centered education, right? But I didn't have those ideas. So what I'm saying to you is, though all of those experiences that you are able to have while you're a student in your early years, whether it's working on a research project, right? Whether it's working on some activity in the community, if it connects to your interests, begin to think about how that aligns to your coursework, so that when you're writing about that stuff that you care about and that matters, because that's where the best research comes from, right? When I know that I'm connected to it, this experience helps shape that research. This experience or this engagement, this conversation helps shape that idea. So I would say it took me about a year and a half to really start developing and honing my ideas. But then when I got it, everything else I did, every paper that I had to write moving forward was connected to some way to that idea. So then when it came time for me to begin that work, that dissertation, those comps questions, I had some foundation, right, that I had established. And so, because the reality is that a doctorate is anywhere from 4, 5, 6 years. And that's money. And I don't know about y'all, but time and money are two things I don't like to waste. And so if I could figure out a way, these are the honest conversations I have with my students. If I could figure out a way to find that idea, that central thought, and keep refining and honing and talking about it early, then when I get to those next stages, I have some foundation to build upon. So that's what I would say, how I got to that place, and how once I figured out that place, how I was able to really move forward and keep moving. Yeah.
That's very helpful. And alignment, and sometimes we shy away from that alignment when we're like, oh, this makes too much sense. And we try to figure out something else. So figuring out that sometimes things can make sense, and we can sit with them and go in that direction and start writing about that to see.
Yeah.
It's very helpful advice. And you've dropped so many different pieces of advice throughout, but if there's one more thing that you wanted to kind of share with the prospective students that are on the call and the current students that are on the call about your time in the PhD program, advice that they can take with them, what would it be?
I would tell you, trust and enjoy the process, all of it. The late nights reading, the deep conversations, the 20 draft revisions that you have to do. Trust and enjoy that entire process, because who you become afterwards is really all of that, right? Who then you are, the expert that you are, the knowledge, the subject matter, the research, the development that you are, you have so much gift and talent before, but after, man, you're amazing. So enjoy and entrust that process, because that process will shape and refine and develop you to be able to do the work that really matters, that is important, that change lives, whether it's in the classroom, the K through 12 setting, whether it's in academia, whether it's in the community. All of those experiences will prepare you for what is to come. So trust that process. Enjoy that process. Enjoy sitting up talking to people about different theories and why this theory is better than the other. Because then maybe in the future you're talking about something else, but it's still that engagement. It's still that I guess that experience of talking and learning new ideas and thinking about new perspectives, right? Creating that community. The people I went through my doctoral studies with are still my friends and my colleagues today. They're all at different universities and different spaces, but I still call on them and we still can talk about things, and then we engage, and I have that support there, right? Also, I went to various conferences, right? I met people across the world. So I still connect with those. So all of that was a part of my PhD process. And if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't be the professor. I wouldn't be the teacher. I wouldn't be the friend, the colleague, the mother that I am today, the wife that I am today, if I had not had those experiences and trust that process. I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I really was able to hone in on that passion and develop it through my PhD, my doctoral studies. So that's why I say trust the process and enjoy it, because the outcomes will be amazing for you.
Thank you for that. I'm definitely gonna have that in the back of my mind as I move forward, just in life. I think that it's a good nugget to have. So I'm gonna ask again that if anybody has any questions for Dr. Earl, please put that in the chat. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for some questions, I'm going to ask if our director of admissions could come on really quickly and just share something about the admissions process for the prospective students on the call.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I'm Jackie Brazil. I'm the Director of Admissions here at the School of Education. I just wanted to give you some idea of what the application process looks like, as well as the upcoming deadline for the fall of 2025. So the application is a process that you will do online. Everything is done online with our process. It is an online application that you'll submit. There is a $50 non-refundable fee that you will pay alongside that. In the application, in addition to all your personal information you'll put in there, there is a goal statement required. You do have a writing sample as part of the PhD application that you'll be required to submit. We need transcripts officially from all institutions you've attended. Even if you took a class in high school at your local community college, we do need each transcript individually from those schools. And then you'll have to also supply names for 3 letters of recommendation. We'll reach out to them specifically to get the information. And then you also include a resume with your application. So those are kind of the components of the application itself. We do not require a GRE or test. So yay, that's pretty exciting. And the deadline to apply for fall of 2025 is coming up on December 1st. So we do still have some time. It's not like it's tomorrow, but you are going to want to be working on it and thinking about it now. I'm going to go ahead. Oh, somebody asked if the application fee can be waived. We do have a process where you can request a fee waiver. It is not guaranteed. There is a committee that decides if you have an extenuating circumstance where we will waive that fee. So there on our website, if you go on there, you can find the need-based fee waiver and submit that and see if you qualify for having your fee waived. But I'm going to drop my name and my email in the chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email and I'm happy to help with the process. We are also going to be having a PhD application workshop virtually coming up in October. So that'll be posted on the website soon. So just keep your eyes out for that. But that'll be, you know, us as a staff being there to help you through the application process because we know it can be a lot. So that's kind of my spiel about applying, and please reach out to me if you have any questions. I am so happy to help.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And I don't see any question in the chat. I just wanted to share that someone said, thank you so much. And you shared so much informative information with us, Dr. Earl, today. And if we have any questions that come later, we'll be happy to send you to them so that you can kind of answer those questions for the students. Again, this has been such an informative talk, and I am super excited to get to actually meet you. I was in Georgia last week, and if I had gotten to meet you virtually 1 week earlier, we maybe have met in person. But I'm glad that I have that connection now. So again, I just want to thank everyone for their time and being here. Dr. Earl, Dr. Williams, and this was such a great experience. We look forward to the next one. So thank you all for attending.
Thank you. Take care.